asexuality, so subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So, have you ever been on the receiving end of heterosexual comments about asexuality? Have you ever been subjected to various things you're meant to be because you're asexual? Well, in this episode, I'm going to be busting through some myths and stereotypes and comments and remarks that heterosexuals say about asexuals and ask asexuals, which are very inappropriate. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stay tuned. If you're new to this channel, you might need to know that I'm asexual myself, and I have a book for asexuals. I'm an asexual author. Hello, Lee! And I've got Asexual Perspectives book and Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual book out. I've also got 4 other books in the process, in the works as we were. So I do apologise for being late. If you've moved on to the 7th of April now, Asexual Awareness Day was yesterday. So I am late to my own live stream. I did do a shorts video about that. So sorry about me being late. But if it's still the 6th of April in your country, happy Asexual Awareness Day, right? And every day should be Asexual Awareness Day. And I think with this channel, it actually is. So my goal with this channel is to show asexuality in real life context throughout the whole year, so you can get an idea of different challenges that we face as asexuals. So some of the challenges, huge challenges we face as asexuals, is the fact we do get a lot of people misunderstanding us and thinking a lot of myths and stereotypes about asexuality that simply isn't true. So one of the remarks I've had in the past is, oh, so you're a nun then? Because I'm an asexual who's sex repulsed to me personally, instead of them just accepting that some people are not interested or attracted to people sexually and not interested in sex, they tend to like to throw what I call insults at us, like you're frigid, or there's something wrong with you sexually, or you're a nun, is one of the comments I actually had to me. And it's just like very inappropriate and very insulting. Just because someone doesn't want sex, doesn't experience sexual attraction, or has a lack of it, doesn't mean to say there's anything wrong with them. I was absolutely horrified recently to find out that on my medical records, someone I spoke to on the phone, a medical professional, put me down as having a sexual dysfunction because I told her I'm asexual and not interested in sex. Hello to everyone in chat. And this is the first time I've ever had this on my medical records. And I asked my medical records recently, and I was like horrified. Like, asexuality is not a sexual dysfunction. I still can experience arousal. I can still get attracted to guys in multiple other ways. I can still masturbate, all this type of thing, right? So there's nothing wrong with my arousal levels. There's nothing wrong with me. My tackles all working down there, if you like. I'm just really, really, really not interested in sex. Someone says that they like my accent. Oh, thank you so much. Nice to see everyone chat. Mia. And the chat's quite small, so if I miss your comments, I do apologise. So yeah, that there's nothing wrong with being asexual. So asexuality, in broad terms, is a sexual orientation that's based on the lack of sexual attraction. But asexuality is also a spectrum, ranging from those people who don't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever to those who do experience sexual attraction, but just infrequently, under limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or they experience it but not enough to want to act on it. That's the usual grey asexual end of the asexual spectrum. So if you think about a piece of string, if you like, on one end, I should say, you've got people who lack any sexual attraction whatsoever, and then the other piece of string is more towards the sexual end of the asexual spectrum, where before the sexual spectrum begins, before the heterosexual and all different types of sexualities in terms of sexuals, heterosexuals, homosexuals, pansexuals, bisexuals. That's when they start after the grey asexual part of the asexual spectrum, if you like. So you've got like pure asexuals who don't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever. Then you've got the grey asexuals, and then you've got when the sexual spectrum starts. And obviously, whatever sexuality you are has different degrees of how much a person is individually interested in sex anyway. You'll find that even between heterosexual couples, it varies the amount of sex they want to have, the amount of sexual interest they have, and it can all vary. Hello, Nikki. Hello, everyone in chat. So, so it can vary between any different types of person as to what sex they'll have, how much sex. But asexuality is fundamentally based on a lack of sexual attraction. So in the main, we don't see someone and think, I want sex with them. However, the grey asexuals have a more tendency towards being able to have sex because they're not usually sex repulsed, a lot of the grey asexuals, although some are. So people think that no asexuals ever have sex, and this is not true. Some asexuals do have sex. And so heterosexuals don't really understand, like, if someone's asexual, why would someone have sex? And that is because there's different types of reasoning behind it. One is that you might like sex as an activity to do, like someone likes playing like hockey, or someone likes playing football, or someone likes playing a video game, for example. It's kind of like something that they'll take part in, and they might find it interesting in some ways. But maybe it's like playing rounders or something at school, and they're doing the rounders because everyone's doing it, and they feel okay about doing it. They're consensual, they want to join in, but they just really like going through the sport because kind of like that's what's expected of them, and everyone else is kind of doing it. Some people who are asexual are interested in doing that to be closer to their partner. Other people who have sex who are asexual would be able to take it or leave it. They're not bothered whether they have it or not. And some others might literally be doing it, but really not that interested, not that bothered about it, could get quite bored with it because the sexual attraction isn't there for a lot of asexuals. This means that as they have no sexual attraction, there's a lack of sexual interest, there's a lack of interest in having sex because the sexual attraction isn't there. I hope this is making sense, but every person's individual as an asexual person. So it depends on the person's individual circumstances, the partner they have. It depends also on how they feel about sex in that given moment. It depends whether they're sex repulsed or not. I am personally a sex repulsed asexual for me these days, but I did have sex in the past because I actually thought I had to as part of a normal relationship because that's what society dictates. Like, people get conditioned. I know lots of people don't like this word, but it's actually true. People get conditioned from birth to believe that 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 everyone is meant to be asexual. I was going to say everyone's meant to be asexual. That would be good, wouldn't it? Everyone is meant to be heterosexual. See, I think everyone should be asexual. No, I don't. Right? That's so funny. I just got carried away with asexuality there because I love being asexual so much, right? But everyone's conditioned from birth. Maybe we should swap it around and condition everyone to be asexual instead. But no, you can't change your sexuality. That's another thing I need to talk about. Right. So anyway, the majority of us are conditioned, not all of us, because if we've got gay parents or lesbian family members, this type of thing, but a lot of people are conditioned from birth to believe that we're heterosexual, right? And that heterosexuality is the sexuality. The heterosexuality is the sexuality that you're meant to be, right? But this is conditioning. This is what's instilled in your mind from very early age. And unless you get told otherwise, or you find out through a relationship that you're different, you don't know any different. So I thought I was heterosexual for years. I was in heterosexuals for the majority of my life. I've even in like the most recent years, I've dated heterosexual guys, not asexual guys, right? And it does pose a lot of difficulties if there's a lot of misunderstandings about asexuality. So first of all, asexuality is a sexual orientation. It's not a choice. So someone's not choosing to be asexual. I've had even a comment recently on this channel saying, oh, I'm going to stop being asexual. You can't be stopping asexuality if you're not, if you're actually asexual. Do you understand what I mean? So if someone's not interested in sex, that's not the same as being asexual. If someone's just not wanting sex in that moment, that's not them being asexual. If someone hasn't had sex for like, I don't know, 2 years because they haven't had a partner, that's not being asexual. That's just not having a partner. It's just circumstantial, right? Whereas asexuality is a genuine sexual orientation. So asexuality is not a choice. Like, if someone abstains from sex, that's a choice. If someone isn't having sex because they haven't had a partner for a while and maybe they don't want sex casually, then that's not asexuality. It just means you haven't had sex for a while because you haven't found someone to have it with, right? You can't make yourself be asexual, and you can't stop yourself being asexual. If you're asexual, it's a sexual orientation. A heterosexual person can't say, hey, I want to stop being heterosexual. Do you know what I mean? You'd have to force yourself to stop having the cravings, or stop actually having sex and acting on the cravings for sex if you get cravings for sex. Do you know what I mean? So with asexuality, we're not forcing ourselves to not have sex. We're not keeping everything in. We're not suppressing and repressing ourselves because we don't actually go after sex, and a lot of us don't need sex or want it in the first place. We don't have that innate desire. This is the main difference between a sexual person and an asexual person. Sexuals have an innate desire and need and urge and want for sex with someone or multiple people. You see someone you like and like, oh, I'd love to have sex with them. I wonder what they're like in bed. This is putting it in really simplistic terms, right? Getting laid, like swearing words like effing and shagging and all this lot, all those crude terms, right? Whatever you want to say, that's kind of how a lot of brains work, heterosexual brains work. Not everyone's brain automatically goes to sex. That's not what I'm saying. But there's some point you have a need, urge, or want for sex. You'll see someone and think, oh, I wonder what it's like to have sex with them, or I'm sexually attracted. I feel sexual towards them now, right? Whereas with the asexuals, we can be in a relationship, or we can even be close proximity to someone, and we might like their smile, we might like their personality, we might like their hair, we might like chatting to them, we might even like cuddles and kisses. But for the majority of us who are not interested in sex, we don't think about that. And even for a lot of asexuals that do have sex, it wouldn't be the first thing that comes to mind. A lot of asexuals that do have sex, they kind of have it because their partner wants it and they're happy to partake in that. And if they want to get physically closer to their partner, but there is a lot of ways to be intimate without having sexual intercourse. Sharing a deep emotional connection and talking about how you feel is how you create a lot of intimacy. You can have intimacy of the mind when you're talking about deep, meaningful things, when you're having a long conversation with someone. Intimacy can be sharing your deepest, most darkest and wildest desires. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's sexual. It could be something like, oh, I don't know, you like dressing up as a marshmallow or something. Crazy. I want to cuddle on the bed dressed in a marshmallow suit. That could be quite funny. So yeah. It might be your fantasies, it might be your deepest desires, it might be something you've always wanted to do, like I want to go on a hot air balloon or something like that. It can be a variety of things, but the more you share your secrets, the more you open up emotionally to that person and share how you feel, the more you talk about your day and your life and what you're interested in. All this creates intimacy and builds deep emotional connection. And often asexuals love through emotional connection because the majority of us aren't interested in genitalia. We don't look at someone and go, oh, that person's got a big dick, for example. And it's like, so what if they got a big dick? I can care less. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in how kind the person is, how honest the person is, how nice the person is, what the person's personality is like. If I'm not interested in sex, why am I interested in genitalia? I'm really not. I'm really not interested in genitalia at all. I can care less, right? It's like, keep that for yourself. I don't need that in my life, right? I'm interested in the person. Right, so for me personally, as a sex repulsed asexual, the thought of having sex is like, oh, it's kind of gross. I've had sex before in the past, but I was doing it because society, like I said, it conditions us to believe that we're all heterosexual and that that's the right sexuality to be, and that you're supposed to have sex in order to have a loving, healthy, happy, committed relationship. But it's not loving, healthy, and happy if both people are not really enjoying that or not really into that. Right? If you've ever been in a relationship with someone, ever dated someone, where you've been sat across the table from someone and you really like the look of them. You're staring into their eyes and you're listening to everything they say, and then all of a sudden they're like looking away and they're distracted and they're not really into the conversation that you're into, and you're already there being enthusiastic and they're like somewhere else on another planet in their mind, right? This is kind of what it's like if you're having sex with someone who's really not that interested in sex. It's kind of like they're in their own world and in their own planet. Because it's like if they're not interested, they're not interested. It's better to have two people that are really interested in similar things in relationships, or complementary things, because compatibility is the fundamental foundation of any relationship. And if you're not compatible, then you shouldn't be together, even if you love each other. So why would an asexual person still look for a relationship? That's a big question. I get asked a lot. So just because we're asexual doesn't mean to say we don't like affection. There's a lot of ways that we can love affection, such as kissing and cuddling and holding hands, being in close proximity to someone. We still want companionship, a lot of us. We still want a person to be there with us, like a best friend and a soulmate. And so just because we don't think about genitalia, for those asexuals that don't, because asexuality is a spectrum, like I've said. Excuse me, I'm going to have some water quickly. So for those asexuals who are not interested in sex at all, it doesn't mean to say we don't want other forms of physical contact, other forms of physical affection. And it's a human need for us to have and want connection in our life, for everyone on the planet to want some form of connection. Even the people that are very depressed and lonely and isolated, a lot of those will be on the internet. They'll be scouring channels, they'll be looking at things on the internet because they still want to connect with people in some way, right? And that's the same for asexuals. We want connection. We can still love. We just don't need to love through a mixture of genitalia, right? We don't need to love through sex. Sex isn't love, and love isn't sex, right? There are lots of people who go out, for example, to nightclubs to get laid, to have sex. It doesn't matter who they have it with, they're just on a mission to have sex that night, right? Because they're not looking for love, they're looking for sex. So equally, there are people in the world that look for love without the sex, because we don't need the sex, we need the love. So you have to understand, this is actually very important that you know that there are asexuals that exist, because a recorded 1% of the population is asexual. This means 1 in every 100 people you meet is likely to be asexual. So this could be your mum that's asexual, it could be a brother, it could be a cousin, could be an auntie, could be a teacher, could be your neighbour. There are lots of people that are asexual around the world, just they're not usually out about being asexual like I am. And that can be because they live in fear of ridicule, people making fun of them, people saying things that isn't true about them, people misunderstanding asexuality. Asexuality is not the same as abstaining. It's not the same as waiting for marriage. It's not the same as not having sex for religious reasons. It's not to conserve sexual energy. It's not because we're suppressing or repressing ourselves. It's not to do with sexual dysfunction. It's not to do with some sort of disability that means we can't have sex. Of course, there are asexuals that have disabilities, but it's not that makes us asexual. It's not that that enables us to be asexual. You can't make yourself be something you're not. So asexuality often is something that we're born with, those of us that are asexual, but don't realize it till later in life. Like, I didn't discover I'm asexual till 2014, and I started this channel in 2015. So it's a long time that I was under the impression that I am heterosexual. And the reason I didn't know any different was because I do experience arousal, but I don't experience sexual attraction. And these are two completely different things that people conflate all the time. So arousal is a feeling in your genitalia that may or may not be linked to someone. right? I can get aroused through thinking about kissing with no one else involved but myself, or just thinking about kissing because I'm a hyper romantic and a hyper kisser, which is rare for any sexuality. The majority of asexuals are not that into kissing. A lot of them don't even like the saliva mixing in the mouth. They don't like tongue kissing. A lot of them, not all of them. Obviously, I'm asexual, but there's a lot of asexuals. They prefer cuddles to watch Netflix and really chill with it, not have sex with it, right? And they prefer cuddles and hugs, this type of thing. But I love kissing a lot, too extreme. I'm a hyper kisser and a hyper romantic, but this is not typical of asexuals. The majority of asexuals, they might like a little peck on the cheek. They might like a tiny little kiss on the lips, but that's usually where it ends. But for me, I'm the opposite of that, and I am a very rare hyper kisser. I've never ever met anyone actually in the world so far. I'm sure there's someone who's a hyper kisser. What does this mean? A hyper kisser means I can kiss for up to 3 hours or more and literally not get bored, and literally do that. I have done that, right? Because I love the kissing, and for me, it's a very pleasurable experience. The pleasure is in the kissing, not in the sex for me. With my clothes on, I might add, because I'm nudity repulsed. I'm not interested in showing my body naked to anyone, right? But I love kissing. I'm really into kissing. So with me, I like a guy from the waist up, not below the waist. I'm not interested in him. Do you know what I mean? But I do like sitting on guys' lap in between his legs, which you could argue is sexual. So I have some sexual behavior if I do that, and with the way I like to dance sometimes. But I have zero sexual attraction. So sexual behavior in sexual action is not the same as sexual attraction. So, for example, an asexual could have sex, which means they've behaved in a sexual manner by having the sex, but that doesn't mean to say they experience sexual attraction, because the sexual attraction is when you think, oh, I'd love to have sex with that person right now. You have this innate need and desire within your soul, within your being. Oh, I really want that. It's like an urge, a want, and a need, right? But with asexuals who are not sexually attracted at all, we don't have that innate need, desire, or want. We don't have those feelings. So I've had guys saying to me, how are you holding yourself back when I'm kissing them, especially for long periods of time? Like, I don't understand how you're doing it. How can you do it? They say to me. I'm like, because I'm not holding anything back. I'm not suppressing. I'm not repressing. I don't have those feelings. So I'm able to kiss for hours and never want sex, because it doesn't make me want to do that. I'm able to experience arousal completely separate to someone who experiences sexual attraction, because they're not the same thing. And I came across someone who was on this channel saying, oh, if you experience arousal, that's sexual attraction. It's not. Sexual attraction is the need, urge, or want for partner's sexual intercourse with a person or specific people, or a lot of people, right? Arousal is a feeling in your genitalia that may or may not be linked to anyone. Because if they're doing something that makes you feel aroused, you're going to get aroused. If an asexual has full working tackle down there, they're still capable of arousal. Not every asexual experiences arousal. I've known some that don't, right? But a lot of us are capable still of that thing. Some asexuals masturbate. Some asexuals do, and they masturbate for different reasons. One is like to go to sleep, for example. I talk about these topics in my Asexual Perspectives, but please get a copy on Amazon if you haven't already got a copy, because this talks about all these type of things. Like, it talks about the difference between sexual attraction, sexual desire, and arousal. It talks about asexuals who masturbate as well and watch porn, for example. Like, I personally hate porn. I cannot stand porn. I'm very personally anti-porn. But the majority of asexual guys that I've come across still have interest in porn. I can't stand it. I really can't. I've been like that since a kid. I really am anti-porn. And there is actually no need for it, because you can actually masturbate without watching porn. But the majority of people don't think that, but it's absolutely true. I know this from personal experience. You don't have to have that. And you can stimulate the mind in other ways. And you can just get used to touching yourself in certain ways that allows you to be able to pleasure yourself without having anyone else involved, right? And there's also a myth that you cannot come without having intercourse, and that's a myth as well. Right? You can have situations where you're kissing so much that you naturally come. This is very personal, right? I'm educating you sexually here. Maybe you didn't know these things, but you don't have to have intercourse to do that. And most people think you do, but it's possible to do that without intercourse, right? Without the sexual intercourse. So some asexuals could, for example, do that. It's each individual asexual is different, but a lot of asexuals are not interested in sex. I'd say probably about 25% of asexuals, I reckon, probably do participate in sex. So about 75% probably don't, and 25% do. That's my own opinion. There's no statistics to back that up, but it's just because I've been in the asexual sphere, if you like, for quite some time now. And that's my personal opinion. I think about 25% probably do. Still quite a lot, really. But there's no statistics that I know of, no one's done a survey actually saying that, right? So I just want people to understand that someone could have sex, but it doesn't stop them being asexual. It's kind of more like why they're doing it. Obviously, if they go, oh, I really need sex, and they're getting the need, urge, or want for it, that's not asexuality. And I want to make that clear. There are some people that come into the asexual communities and they're not really asexual at all, and they've pretended to be asexual, which is very, very dishonest. And I think we need, as a society, to have more dating sites that talk about asexuality and what it is. Because if you're a heterosexual person, for example, and you really want sex, and you're talking to asexuals on dating sites who don't want sex, you're going to be very, very disappointed. And you're both going to be wasting each other's time. This is why it's important for you to know. And also, like I said, a family member or friend could be asexual. Someone you know could be asexual. And if you've even got a crush on someone, and you're like, oh, but they're just a little bit different, and I'm not sure when I'm flirting with them, they're not even kind of understanding that I'm flirting with them, I'm making it so obvious, that person could be asexual, because a lot of asexuals, they don't understand flirting. I do, because I thought I was heterosexual for years, and I can flirt myself, even though I'm asexual, because I thought I was heterosexual for years. So I have some sexual behaviour. I did have sex in the past. I understand how heterosexual thing. And some asexuals can be in relationships with heterosexuals, and others can be in relationships with asexuals, and others are single. And some asexuals are in, they're in with a biromantic person. So some sexuals may be with a lesbian or a gay person as well, because you can have gay asexuals or lesbian asexuals. Some people refer to themselves as that. So it would be like a homoromantic person, someone who's romantically attracted to the same gender, for example, could end up being with a lesbian. But you have to understand that it can be very difficult to have an asexual person with a heterosexual person. Sometimes those relationships work, but it's very difficult, because obviously if the sexual person really wants sex, the asexual doesn't, that's not really compatible. So in those cases, I would strongly usually recommend, unless there's any workarounds, to basically not get together in the first place. I mean, if the asexual is willing to do some sexual acts, even if it's not having full sex, and the heterosexual person is okay with that, for example, it could possibly work. Some asexuals are okay to having open relationships where their partner has sex elsewhere. For me personally, that's cheating, and it's totally unacceptable. Hello, Jonathan. Probably a meat feast type pizza. I don't know what you're talking about in chat. I'll leave you to carry on your chat, because I don't know what pizza's got to do with what I'm talking about, but as it's heterosexuals in a lot of the chat, I can gather what the pizza's talking about. Probably sexual stuff. But anyway, back to what I'm talking about. So with a heterosexual and asexual relationship, some of them can work, but I personally would never ever want to be in a relationship with some guy who was going and having sex with other women. I have actually been asked that before by a guy. So I had a date with a Bangladesh guy years ago. I think it was Bangladeshi, and he said to me, he wanted me to be his girlfriend. And after one date, this is, which is totally unacceptable anyway. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I'm not interested in sex. And he's like, oh no, that's fine. You can be my girlfriend and I can have sex with other women. And I was absolutely horrified. Categorically, to me, this is cheating and absolutely disgusting. Why would I even want to put myself through that when I can actually just be single? Right? I'd rather stay single forever and just be enjoying my life than be with a guy who's going having sex with other women. There's absolutely no benefit of that for me whatsoever. No benefit. Nothing. Diddly squat. I've got friends. I don't need to be in a relationship with a guy who's having sex with other women. To me, this is very disgusting. And just because I'm asexual doesn't mean to say I don't deserve the same monogamy as everyone else. Right? And everyone has their own needs, own wants, own likes and own dislikes in the relationships they have with other people. And we're all individuals. So if you come across someone who's asexual, it's best to ask the asexual what they're happy with in a relationship, what their ideal relationship would look like, and what being asexual means for them. Does it mean that all sex is completely off the table? Do you hate sex? What's your attitude towards it? What do in terms of physical touch, how much physical touch do you like or not like? What would the physicality of the relationship look like? Even within the asexual community, it's very difficult to find a compatible match because of the varying degrees at which asexuals like physical touch and don't like it, and like physical intimacy and don't like it. And also, a lot of asexuals are spread all around the world. A lot of us aren't in the same vicinity. So it can be very difficult to find a match. But I do know asexuals who are married to other asexuals. And they've been married for a few years. Do you know what I mean? So you can have loving, healthy, happy, committed, no sex relationships. As far as I know, because I don't ask them all their personal details, as far as I know, both couples are sex repulsed asexuals, meaning I don't believe they have sex from what I know of them. Obviously, I don't go around going, do you have sex? Because I've never asked them that. But as far as I know, they're sex repulsed. And they don't need that. They still like kissing and cuddling, as far as I know. So you can get asexuals that are romantic asexuals and the asexuals that are non-romantic. They don't experience romantic attraction, I should say. So someone like me is a hetero-romantic asexual. So that means hetero means I'm attracted romantically to the opposite gender. So in my case, I'm attracted to guys. And I'm not sexually attracted to them though. So a person who's not romantic attracted to someone would be called an aromantic or aromantic asexual. Most people pronounce it aromantic. I pronounce it aromantic because I'm a romantic person, and it can get confusing. So aromantic asexual. So the ones that lack romantic attraction, lack sexual attraction. But an aromantic person is not unique to asexuality. Aromanticism is a spectrum of people that are not interested in romantic relationships or they lack romantic attraction. So you can get aromantic heterosexuals and aromantic asexuals. Aromantic heterosexuals would still experience sexual attraction, but they don't experience romantic attraction. And asexual aromantics would not experience sexual attraction and would not experience romantic attraction in the main, unless they're a grey asexual who experiences it under limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or they experience it but not enough to want to act on it. So within aromanticism, there is a spectrum as well. So you can have, for example, a grey romantic is someone who does experience romantic attraction, but it's infrequent. It's not enough for the full romance. A demi-romantic person is someone who can only experience romantic attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed, maintained, and sustained. Same as a demisexual can only experience sexual attraction when a deep emotional bond has been maintained and sustained. This is not the same as someone wanting an emotional connection as a preference. You have to understand that asexuality is not a preference. It's not a choice. It's not something that we just do on a whim. Asexuality is not a red letter day either. It's not an experience to try. So when I've been on dating sites, I get a lot of guys who are like, oh, I'd like to try that. Like having a date with me because they'd like to try it like a bit like a novelty act right? I'm not a novelty act. I have feelings and emotions. I'm looking for a serious, long-term committed relationship. I'm actually not proactive on dating sites at the moment. I'm still on Badoo. And it's not a red letter date. It's not like they're like, oh, I'd like to try to be asexual. Can you make me be asexual? How can I get to be asexual? It's like you can't put asexuality on like a coat and try it for size. It's like, why, if that's the case, then why don't you go and try being a lesbian for a day? Why don't you go try being a bisexual for a day? Why don't you go try being a pansexual for a day? Why don't you try that red letter day, that coat of many colours? Do you know what I mean? Because you can't try a sexuality out. It's something that you innately are, right? That doesn't mean to say that people can't change their sexuality or realise they're a different sexuality. Because I thought I was heterosexual for years, but I actually wasn't. And looking back, in my childhood, I can see for definite that I was always asexual. I was born asexual, but I didn't realise it because I've never been interested in sexual acts. I've never been interested in partaking in sexual stuff. Like, I've never thought about it unless someone brought it up and started asking me to do that type of thing, right? I never thought as a teenager, this is a huge sign you're asexual. If you just think about kissing and cuddling, but you never think about the sex. It doesn't even enter your head, right? When a guy even suggested sex, I'm like, like in my teens, I'm like, what? It's like, I didn't think that way. My brain doesn't think that way. My brain would think like I'd be like really like having love feelings for it or fancy feelings for a guy for like maybe 2 years. And I'd be thinking like all romantic stuff, like kissing and cuddling with him and just being close to him and, seeing his smiling face and just feeling him near me in my vicinity. But I never thought about jumping his bones, as they say. I never thought about having sex with him. I never thought about getting off with him or any sexual stuff with him. It's just purely like I'd love to be around him. I'd love to kiss him. I'd love to cuddle him. I'd love to do romantic things with him, like take a walk together, just chat till the early hours of the morning, just to be around each other. You know what I mean? So I just like want people to understand that some people genuinely don't have an interest in sex. We don't have that innate need. We don't have that desire. Or we don't have that want. So other questions I get like on dating sites like, oh, so will you give me a BJ then? So I put in my dating site specifically, I'm asexual. I'm not interested in sex, right? And the BJ, if you didn't know what that means blowjob. And it's like, what part of I do not want sex? Do you not understand? I don't want any type of sex. I'm not interested in anal sex, oral sex, any type of sex. It doesn't interest me. It's boring to even be talking about it. And I'm actually very unconventional. I'm a non-conformist individualist. And for me personally, I'm not interested in sex. I'm not interested in marriage. I'm not interested in kids. I prefer to live separately. To me, that's really boring. If I come across another guy and he's like, oh, I want kids, I want marriage, I want sex. Personally, to me, even though thousands of people want that in the world, it's so boring. It's like a record that goes round and round spinning. And I'm just like, I'm so bored. Can't you bring anything new to the table? Is this all you want? The same thing that everyone wants? To me, that's not exciting. To me, that's very boring. It's like, I don't personally want that, right? So as well as being asexual, some asexuals, they don't want to live with anyone. And other asexuals want to live with someone from the companionship. Some asexuals, they want to live with their friends, but they don't actually want even a relationship. They just want to live with their friends because they think it'd be cool to hang out with their friends, cool to be in a community of friends and live together for companionship and maybe to share bills and stuff. So I personally am not interested in sharing bills. I know from past personal experience that a lot of people in relationships, they struggle with money and they have a lot of problems with money and it causes a lot of issues between them. But if you have your own bills and pay them yourself, you don't need that extra hassle to worry about. Do you know what I mean? But interestingly, a lot of heterosexuals, well, they did a survey years ago, and 10% of the population, which I'm assuming is heterosexuals that were surveyed, have a living apart together relationship. So this means when you have a relationship, but you live separately from each other. And there are couples that do that. There are married couples. Even in my job, one of my old jobs, there was like a married couple. and they had separate places as well. Because I used to manage a furniture concession, and they were looking at getting their bedrooms planned out for them and kitted out with furniture and having a design service that I used to talk about. And they both had a separate place. So they want a designer to go around to each place, even though they were married, they lived separately. There was also a guy who, again, he was separate from his partner as well. He didn't live with her, a customer, when I worked in another store. So it's common for some people who are not even asexual, who like sex, to not live together. So it's kind of like a modern thing in some ways, but it's been happening for a number of years now. So asexuality is something that is, I guess, unique in lots of ways because it does make us different, but it also gives us a different perspective on relationships because we're able to look, a lot of us, at the different character traits of a person. However, if you're someone who's a hyper romantic like me, romantic notions do get in the way and sometimes blur reality, just like people can get confused and with sexual attraction. A lot of people get sexually attracted to someone and they look at someone who might be completely incompatible with them, but they go in and they're like, oh, I really, really, really am sexually attracted to this person. I can't get enough of this person. I want to be with them. I want to be physically having sex with them. I want to see them, right? And it's strong sexual attraction, but that doesn't make someone compatible. And just like a sexual person can be sexually attracted to someone and have that as a very fundamental foundation of why they're going after someone and want to be with someone, an asexual who has a lot of romantic feelings could still end up attracted to someone who was incompatible because they have such strong romantic feelings for a person, even if they're not right to be together. So asexuality is a lack of sexual attraction. It's not a lack of attraction, full stop. We can still have things like romantic attraction or aesthetic attraction, intelligence attraction, close attraction is another one, emotional attraction, creative attraction. These are all different types of attractions that you can have. I have like 8 different types of asexual attractions, like aesthetic and romantic and close attraction, intelligence attraction, emotional attraction, like soul attraction, creative attraction. I have lots of going on, but I'm not sexually attracted to guys, so I don't look at a guy and ever think I want sex with him. Even guys I've had sex with in the past, I'd rather have been doing other things like the washing up, and I hate washing up, or listening to music because it's more interesting for me, or just having the guy's kiss and his finger at the time, right? That's what I was interested in. I wasn't interested in the sex because for me that's not interesting, because I'm not interested in genitalia. I'm not interested in having sex because I'm personally sex repulsed for me, and I don't see the point in it for me. It's not necessary. I don't get pleasure out of that, not because there's anything like so people say, oh, you're asexual because you haven't had good sex, right? I have had sex with 5 different boyfriends in the past. My last long-term relationship, which ended in 2011, he was very good at sex, even though I'm not interested in that. The other ones weren't good and he was good, right? So I have had good sex, but I'm just really not interested in it. Why was he good? Because he catered a lot to my needs, my own, like, what I was interested in. He's very good at foreplay, for example, which I would have much preferred to carry on doing than have the sex itself, because that's what I was interested in. Whereas the other guys, they just stick it in. One guy literally split up with him after about 3 weeks because I was so bored with the sex, because he was just like, that's all he was interested in, pretty much. I mean, he cooked for me, which was really nice. I liked his cooking, but it's just the sex was boring. But with my last long-term ex, it wasn't boring. I just really would be rather have done other stuff because it's not interesting for me, and it's just, I'm not interested because I don't experience the sexual attraction, and I'd rather be doing other stuff, but he was good at that because he was very attentive to my needs. Anytime I wanted to stop, he would just stop in mid-flow. Anytime I just, was like, oh, I've had enough now, I don't, or I didn't want to do that, he was fine with that. Do you know what I mean? So that was all cool. And, he loved kissing a lot like I do, so that really helped. He loved romance like I did, so I don't miss being with that guy. He was a complete wrong guy for me, but I do miss being in a relationship with a lot of kissing and hand holding and romance, because we used to be kissing everywhere. Like when we were waiting in a theme park, for example, for the ride, we'd be kissing as we were waiting for the ride. We would be kissing when we went on a bus trip together. We would be kissing if we went on a train together. We'd be kissing in the high street. I personally still like that because I'm a hyper kisser. But I didn't know I was a hyper kisser then. I knew I loved kissing a lot, but I didn't know I was a hyper kisser. So for me now, to get my kissing needs met, I'd have to meet someone who was into kissing as much as I did, and they preferred that to the sex, for example, or they're asexual. I'm not opposed to being with a heterosexual in a relationship, but a lot of heterosexuals do need sex, and I am not interested in that. So I'd rather that person not be with me and get someone who they do and can have sex with. So I'm not about changing a heterosexual guy, but if a heterosexual guy wanted to be in a relationship with me, sex with other women is a no-go. Because I don't deserve it. I don't deserve to be cheated on. I'd rather be single and be free and be happy. And so I'm not a nun, which some people say. I had a taxi driver once as well, talking about asexuality. It's like, oh, you're in a daze. Like, and I'm like, no, I'm really not in a daze. It's just silly things. Like, some of the insulting things like heterosexuals say to asexuals, or some really inappropriate things. It's like a lot of them will say, oh, so what made you be asexual? Like there must be an incident that happened in your life to make you asexual. That's completely inappropriate, right? You might have had abuse, but it doesn't mean to say you're asexual, right? Do you know what I mean? I know heterosexuals that have had sexual abuse. They're not asexual. They've just had the sexual abuse, right? It's not good, but that doesn't make someone asexual, right? That's not the same as asexuality. Right, that's just you're not interested. If you're not interested in sex because you've had sexual abuse, it's that you're not interested in sex because you've had sexual abuse. It's not the same as asexuality, where you don't experience sexual attraction. Right, I'm free to have sex if I wanted. If I wanted to have sex, I would, but I'm absolutely not interested in it at all. And I don't need that in my life. There's a lot of positives about not needing that, right? It's very sticky, it's very messy, right? There's condoms you have to buy, or contraception you have to get. And, if you don't want to get pregnant, particularly, changing the bed sheets and like working out times to do that and places to do that and making sure your neighbours can't hear, which most of the time they can anyway, and stuff like this, right? And it's just like, oh man, I don't miss not having sex. I really don't. I haven't had sex since 2011, and I'm now in 2025 when I'm live recording this right now for you. That's like I've been without sex. It'll be October this year. It'll be 14 years without sex. Thank God. Thank God. I don't have to have that anymore in my life. I'm really happy not to have that. Right. And whereas a lot of people in the world are like so sad if they haven't had sex for like 2 months or 5 months or a year or 2 years, and they're longing and craving for that. As an asexual person, to me, I'm celebrating the freedom of understanding my sexuality and no longer having to live a life that's not actually who I am, not having to think that I'm heterosexual and things not quite adding up because I'm not asexual. I mean, I am asexual. I'm not a sexual person. I'm not a sexual person. I am asexual, but not a sexual person. I hope you understood that. So, I'm not a sexual person with a gap. I'm asexual person. So that's problematic as well, because when I talk about being asexual online and I say I'm asexual, a lot of heterosexuals think I'm telling them I'm sexual because like I'm advertising I'm sexual, because they don't understand the A in front of the sexual means absence of sexual attraction when they're put together. So, asexual like this. So the A is there and the sexual straight after it is together. There's no gap. That means that I'm absence of sexual attraction, basically. That's what it stands for. And do get a copy of this book, by the way, on Amazon, Asexual Perspectives. Just type it in the chat. And in the chat, in the search. You can type it in the chat as well if you want. And so I hope you understand the different types of asexuals as well. So, like I said, there's two main types. One that's a pure asexual and one that is a grey asexual. A pure asexual doesn't experience any sexual attraction. A grey asexual can experience sexual attraction, but it's it's limited or infrequent, not enough to be the usual sexual attraction. Now, within both of these pure asexual and grey asexuals, there are subcategories of asexuals. For example, you could have someone who's a biromantic demisexual, meaning they're attracted romantically to more than one gender, to two genders, but they're only sexually attracted when a deep emotional bond has been formed, maintained, and sustained, because they're demisexual. So they're biromantic demisexual. You could have someone who's an aromantic grey asexual, someone who doesn't experience romantic attraction, but they can experience sexual attraction only under limited and infrequent circumstances where they experience it, but not enough to want to act on it. You can get some people that are nuanced in the sense that some people do identify as asexual and heterosexual, for example, which is very strange because you can't really be both if you experience sexual attraction towards someone. If you experience a normal sexual attraction towards someone, then you're not asexual by the fact that you experience sexual attraction towards someone. However, I know people who can be asexually attracted to one gender, as in romantically and aesthetically attracted to one gender, but sexually attracted to another gender. So some of those people decide to identify as asexual and sexual, but you're usually one or the other, unless you're a grey asexual, because then you could identify as, if you identify as a demisexual, but romantic. So if you identify as demisexual, for example, then you would experience sexual attraction, but only when a deep emotional bond has been formed. Otherwise, you're like basically asexual because you don't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever. So you could be demisexual, and then you might say, but maybe you're demisexual towards guys, but you're panromantic, so you're romantically attracted to any gender. So this is how some people identify as both, but usually if you're sexually attracted to anyone, that's the opposite of asexual. And asexuality has lots of different nuances with, so for example, a phrasexual person is on the grey end of the asexual spectrum. A phrasexual person is someone who can only, they're initially sexually attracted to someone, and then basically the sexual attraction wears off and they don't experience sexual attraction anymore the closer they get in terms of emotions. So a demisexual can only experience sexual attraction once a deep emotional bond has been formed, maintained, and sustained. With a phrasexual, they lose sexual attraction when a deep emotional bond has been formed, and especially when it's maintained and sustained. So a lot of phrasexuals find it hard to have any serious, long-term, committed relationships if they want sex involved, because they lose the sexual attraction after a short period of time. Usually it might be 8 months, for example, or less than that. So they're like the opposite of demisexual, but they both fall under the grey asexual part of the asexual spectrum. However, some people who would be able to identify themselves as on the grey asexual part of the asexual spectrum, some of those people don't actually identify as asexual because they do experience sexual attraction in some ways. They don't think it's right to be classing themselves as asexual. So it is up to the individual person. And it's not someone's right or entitlement to have sex in a relationship. I have to make that clear, because there's a lot of people out there that think as soon as they get into a relationship with someone, as soon as they marry someone, as soon as they're in a partnership, they can then demand sex of that person because they're right and they're entitled to it. No, with any sexuality, you're not entitled to have sex with anyone. Sex, it always should be consensual with whatever sexuality person you're dealing with, right? You can't, if you're having sex when someone hasn't agreed to it, that's sexual abuse. It's basically rape. So you have to make sure that whoever you talk to on dating sites, whoever you're interested in, wants to have sex with you consensually, regardless of whether they're asexual or another sexual orientation. But you have to understand that a lot of asexuals, not all of them, but a lot of us don't want sex in the first place. So it's important that you take this seriously, because if you're, like I said, if you're on a dating site or you're looking to get into a relationship with someone, they're asexual and they don't want sex, and you're a heterosexual, for example, who does want sex, that's not compatible, and you're wasting each other's time. You're going to get very upset. One of you or both of you are going to have your heart broken if you get really attached to each other. There are some heterosexuals that can make a relationship work with an asexual person without having any sex and not having sex with other people, but that is quite rare. If the heterosexual feels it's more important to have a deep emotional connection and have an intellectual connection, and they value those things much more importantly than the sex, then it would be possible that they might be able to be with an asexual without sex. Because if their main crux of a relationship, they want to be based on things like obviously respect, honesty, kindness, compassion, all this type of thing, but they like to be intimate in other ways with deep, meaningful conversations, for example, for intellectual stimulation, all these type of things. If that's why they mainly want to be with someone, if that's how they get attracted, then that might be okay for them if the sex is not the main focus of intimacy for them, for example. That's how they might feel satisfied with an asexual person. There are some people who have been so hurt in a relationship by being cheated on, who are not actually asexual, but they actually would value being with an asexual person because they know the asexual is not going to go and cheat and have sex with someone else. And that's obviously valuable. There are people out there that are impotent, not asexual, because asexuality is not the same as impotency. Asexuality is a sexual orientation. Impotency is like a medical problem, where they can't have an erection, for example, or they don't have enough of them, can't get it up, that type of thing, right? But there are those people that are impotent. It might be a serious medical condition they've got. Some people have got disabilities and they can't have sex, and therefore an asexual who's not interested in sex, doesn't want it or need it, might be very suitable for that type of person. If someone's got a physical disability that stops them from having sex, although they're not asexual, they might really love being with an asexual person, because they might really love the fact that someone can love them for who they are without the sex, and everyone deserves to have love. People who have disabilities that stop them from having sex don't not deserve love in an intimate relationship, however that might manifest. So you have to understand there are definitely places in the world for asexuals. There are definitely ways that asexuals can actually help some other people to have a great relationship if that person for some reason doesn't have sex or can't have sex. Because, there are a lot of people who are impotent in the world. And that's really difficult. Then I've been on a site years ago, and there was a lot of women, and they would not be with a guy who was impotent. They're like, oh, he's no good to me. I can't have sex with him. He's not satisfying enough. He's not sexually satisfying enough. I'm just not going to even go there. I'm really dissatisfied with him. But someone who's asexual doesn't need sex could have a very healthy, loving, caring, committed relationship with someone who can't have sex for whatever reason, right? So having said this, there are heterosexuals, for example, who get very frustrated if they can't have sex, even though if it's for some medical reason and they're not asexual, they still get the urges, some of those people. Whereas asexuals don't. That's, in the main, if they're not sexually attracted at all. This is a fundamental difference. So if there's a person who's disabled, for example, and can't have sex because of their disability, but they really would love to have it, they can have a strong dissatisfaction with life and relationships in general, and can feel very frustrated and pass that frustration on to their partner, which is not healthy, right? Because asexuals, remember, are not suppressing and repressing their feelings and emotions and desires and needs and wants, because we don't have those same sexual desires, needs and wants. It doesn't mean to say that some asexuals might not be suppressing other things they need, like love and affection, without the sex, because it's hard, isn't it? Society makes it very difficult to talk about how to have a loving, caring, committed relationship without the sexual pressure, and how to get our needs met, our emotional needs met, our intellectual needs met, our everyday companionship needs met, our communication needs met, right? We all have a lot of different we have a lot of different nuances. All of us do. And it's important that we find people who understand us, right? There are a lot of asexual communities out there. If you are asexual and new to asexuality, there are asexual dating sites. There are asexual Facebook groups. There are asexual meetups in different parts of different countries. Unfortunately, a lot of the asexual meetups are not necessarily on your doorstep. I used to run my own in-person asexual meetups for 5 years. My life is now very different, so I haven't got time to do that right now. But some asexual people have meetups online as well, and it's good to find groups and communities of people that can understand you and who you are. Like, some people say, oh, asexuality is not a real thing. If it's not a real thing, then why am I sat here, should I say, talking to you right now? And I'm definitely asexual. Right, I'm definitely real. There are thousands of asexuals around the globe. 1% of the population, recorded 1% of the population is asexual, right? 1 in every 100 people you meet, right? There's asexual clothing, right? There's asexual books. These are my 2 asexual books so far. I've got 4 more others, right? People buy these books. They wouldn't buy the books if asexuality wasn't a real thing. There wouldn't be people selling asexual clothing and accessories if asexuality wasn't a real thing. Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual. If you're into dating, please get a copy of this book, especially if you're into dating heterosexuals and you're asexual. It's very revealing. I dissect text messages and what a heterosexual says and what he actually means. It's very, very good. My personal diary book. So yeah, 78 Life Lessons to Asexual Life. These are on Amazon, by the way. Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual and Asexual Perspectives, 47 Asexual Stories. Just type them in Amazon and get your copies. So, yeah, I think I've answered quite a lot of the questions about asexuality. To have a quick recap, asexuality is definitely sexual orientation. Asexuals definitely exist. In the main, asexuality is a sexual orientation that's based on the lack of sexual attraction, but lack can actually have 2 meanings. One is someone doesn't have any of that, and another is they don't have enough of it. So if you think of asexuality like that on a spectrum, from those who lack complete sexual attraction, we have none of it, to others on the grey end of the asexual spectrum that have some of it but not enough of it. Right? They lack the full sexual attraction. And it's very important that you understand that 1% of the population is asexual. It could be more than that. So 1 in every 100 people you meet is likely to be asexual. Asexuality is not the same as abstaining, which is a choice. It's not the same as waiting till marriage to have sex. That's not asexuality. It's not the same as not being able to have sex for disability reasons or trauma reasons. That's for disability or trauma reasons. It's not the same as, oh, well, I haven't had sex for 2 years, so I'm living an asexual life because I haven't had sex for 2 years. No, you haven't had sex for 2 years because you haven't found someone to have sex with you for 2 years. But that's not the same thing. And sexuals tend to be quite driven by sex. They tend to be very sexually attracted to someone when they initially meet someone, have a lot of sexual chemistry. Asexuals can have chemistry even if they don't have sexual attraction. I can have chemistry with a guy because he can be experiencing sexual attraction towards me, and I can be experiencing romantic and aesthetic attraction towards him. So there's a chemistry of sorts there. What is chemistry? It's basically chemicals inside your body, and both people are reacting to each other. That's how sexual attraction works as well. It's people whose chemicals are mixing with each other, like, oh, I like this chemicals and I like this chemicals. Once my chemistry teacher, well, she's also a biology teacher in school, she said to the class, which was the most unromantic thing ever, that basically when someone falls out of love with someone, it's because their chemicals change, and love is a chemical reaction. That was basically it. And I'm like, well, that's a very romantic, nice view of it, isn't it? That, love is a chemical reaction, and when you stop loving someone, it's because your chemicals have changed for that person. So yeah, that was the way she phrased it. But chemistry does account for a lot of the way we are drawn to someone. We might like their smile, we might like their charisma, we might like the way they flick their hair, or they smile, or they look up, they raise their eyebrows, look a certain way. This is all like initial attraction. And an asexual person could be attracted to someone, but not necessarily in a sexual way. You know what I mean? For pure asexuals, we don't experience that sexual attraction. So you could think, oh my God, I really like that person, I'd love to have sex with them, I'd love to get to know them, because you're feeling a sexual pull. Whereas an asexual could be like, oh my God, that guy's really interesting, he's very sweet, I like his cute smile. And maybe that person likes the same book as you're reading, for example. Like, oh, reading my favourite book, I'm so excited. Right? Asexuals might get excited over other things. Whereas sexuals might be like, oh, I really want sex now. An asexual person might, oh, I really want to just cuddle with you now. You know what I mean? So you have to navigate these differences in relationships. And what's hard for me in a relationship with a heterosexual is the fact that heterosexual guys do like pushing boundaries a lot. So if I be like, you're not touching here, you're not touching there, you're not touching there, it'll be okay for a while, and then the guy's hands will start to wander, trying to get more. And it's just very hard to navigate that. It makes it very difficult, because if you're an asexual who just doesn't want to be touched in certain places, and the sexual person is wandering with their hands, it can be hard to keep reiterating. That can be very tiresome. It can feel like a lot of pressure and stuff. So, and that's not what love in a relationship should be like. But you have that added kind of tension because a sexual person is naturally sexually attracted to you. And as an asexual person who's not experiencing the sexual attraction, you don't feel the same way. So this can be very hurtful to the heterosexual, for example. I don't usually talk about things from the heterosexual point of view, but obviously a lot of heterosexuals, if you don't respond back with the same sexual attraction, same sexual interest, a lot of heterosexuals could feel rejected. But you have to understand, if an asexual person is sex repulsed, they're not rejecting you, they're just rejecting the sex because they don't want the sex. They could still really love you without the sex, because a lot of heterosexuals, they equate sex to love. They equate them to being the exact same thing when they're not. So an asexual person could love you forever and never ever be interested in sex with you, because they're not interested in the sex, because they're not sexually attracted. If they're an asexual, not sexually attracted at all. It doesn't mean to say they don't love you, because for an asexual person, we don't equate sex to love, whereas a lot of heterosexuals do. They're like, oh, if she's not having sex with me, she must be rejecting me, or not like me in bed, or not like what I'm doing, or not be interested in me. But no, that's not the case. An asexual person can love you completely without ever having a need, urge, or want for sex with you, because we just want to be with you as a person. And you could just leave your genitalia behind somewhere. We wouldn't be interested. We don't need that. Does this make sense? I hope I'm understanding you, and you're understanding me, because I want to foster more understanding in the world. Obviously people have different needs. It's okay if heterosexuals need sex, but what is not okay is when they pressurize an asexual into it. So I've had guys in my inbox asking me to try and make their asexual girlfriend, have sex with them. And this is just not on. This is like sexual abuse, it's rape type of stuff. And I've had them go, oh, my girlfriend, she's asexual, but she won't have sex with me. If an asexual person doesn't want sex, you don't have sex with them. If you're not satisfied and happy with that, split up with the asexual person. Let them be free to be with someone else who can actually love them without sex, and not give them that pressure and not put that on them. Right? Of course you should talk to your partner first. If you're a sexual person who wants sex, you should explain the situation of how you're feeling. But if you know that your asexual partner hates sex and you really love it and want it, that's not going to work long term. Eventually you're going to split up. So it's better to just be honest with each other and know that you can't match each other's needs in that way. There's nothing wrong with an asexual person not wanting sex. There's nothing wrong with a heterosexual person wanting sex. But if both people come together and fundamentally want to change each other, or they want to make it work but they just can't because those needs are so different, then it's better to part ways than stay being unhappy together, right? It's a sad thing, isn't it, when you're incompatible, but only happy relationships are built on compatibility. You can love someone, you can be attracted to them, you can like things about them, but if they're not compatible, it's not going to work in the long term and be sustainable and be happy. It's going to be a rocky road up and down. Having said this, if you're a heterosexual person who hasn't found the right partner for a relationship, and you're really not that bothered about sex because it's not your main focus in a relationship, and you're like, I can take it or leave it, then maybe an asexual person might be suitable for you. Maybe you'll find that an asexual person can add depth to a relationship, which you haven't had in the past, because we're focused on other things, not the sex. And maybe that'll be a huge benefit to you. Lee says, spot on. Thank you, Lee. Lots of love to you. I'm glad you're still here. So how long have you been asexual is a question. I've always been asexual. I was born asexual but didn't realise it. So I found out I'm asexual in 2014. We're now in 2025. So over 10 years I've known I'm asexual. But I've always been asexual. You know, again, that's kind of a question that implies that something made me be asexual. Nothing made me be asexual. I was always asexual. I had my first heterosexual boyfriend at 6 years old. And he wanted to do sexual stuff with me at 6 years old. And I wasn't interested. But I was passionately kissing him at 6 years old. Yes, 6. We're talking about 6 here. 6. Not sex, just in case you got that on the brain. 6. 6 years old. We were passionately kissing at 6 years old, but he wanted to do sexual stuff with me. I didn't, because I wasn't interested in that. I felt really invaded, and it was horrible, because I wasn't interested in that. I actually talked to a counsellor about this when I was 17 years old, and she was like laughing, going, I don't understand why you're so upset. It's just normal for kids to play doctors and nurses. And I was like so upset about it. This is when I was 17. I was upset from that. That happened when I was 6, when the guy wanted to do sexual exploration stuff. And I'm like so upset at 17. I felt traumatized by the fact that I let him do stuff like that. And it's like I wasn't interested. Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't want that. I just wanted the kissing and feel loved. And, you know, at 6 years old, yes, very, very young, I know. So, hello to everyone in chat. So, Colorado, welcome. So, do you know what I mean? You've got to understand that I was always asexual. I just didn't realize it. I thought I was heterosexual because I was born. My parents didn't know any different. It's not their fault. They thought I was heterosexual. Both of my parents are heterosexual. They're not asexual. And I was brought up to think I was asexual. Asexual was brought up to think I was heterosexual. A sexual person, which I'm not. I didn't realise I was asexual. I was brought up to think I was a sexual person, as in a sexual person. So a heterosexual person, that's what I was brought up to think, and believe. So that's what I thought. And in heterosexual relationships, it's standard practice to, you know, to find a person, to be in a relationship with them, to move in or get married to them. And usually people have kids, but I knew at 15 years old, I did not want children. I've never, ever, ever stopped feeling that way. Never. And I remember a doctor saying to me, you'll change your mind. And that really annoyed me because I've never changed my mind. I know my mind. And there's some people that go, oh, you're too young to know you're asexual. I don't believe that. There are people in this book, right? There are people in this book that found out they're asexual like 11 years old and stuff like that. It's very, very young. I think there's someone even younger than that, right? This is 47 different asexuals that are interviewed in this book. So if you're interested in different asexual perspectives, please get this book. And hi Nikki. And so each asexual person is different. We've all got our own needs and desires and wants. And it's all about finding people who can, you know, admire that about us, like that about us in any type of relationship, whatever sexuality you are. It's important to get people who understand you, because when you have people who understand you, it helps you in your identity. It helps solidify your identity. That's why I started doing asexual meetups, because if you're an asexual person, it can feel quite isolating, because obviously a lot of people in the world population is geared towards sex. I mean, I thought I was the only person on the world, planet and universe that didn't want sex, didn't need it, didn't even really like it that much, you know, and as in I'm not really interested in it. It's fine when I did it with my last boyfriend, as in it was, you know, he was good at doing that, but I'd rather not have bothered. I'd rather have been doing other things. So long-term boyfriend I'm talking about, not my short-term. I had a short-term heterosexual boyfriend last year. Wasn't meant to be short-term, but and it wasn't because of asexuality that we split up. It was just we're not compatible in other ways, like didn't have the same values, for example. So some people who are asexual who are in relationships with heterosexuals, for example, it's not always the lack of sex, for example, if they're not having sex as the issue. It can be other things, incompatibility and other things. And so I'm open to possibly being with a heterosexual person, but it's a lot of hard work when you're different sexualities because you're naturally inclined to have different instincts. My instinct is I just want to kiss and cuddle this person, and I want to be free to not have to worry about him touching me in places that I don't want to be touched, or possibly wanting sex with him, pressurizing for that. His mind is like, oh, I really would love to have sex with that person. I'm really sexually attracted to her. She's so hot. I'm so horny for her. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you're asexual with a sexual person, it's two different mindsets. And I can understand that I was always asexual, born asexual, just by looking back at all my childhood. Like I said, in my teens, I was attracted to a lot of guys. I did have a lot of boyfriends. Actually, I used to have boyfriends in succession, which I don't recommend, you know. Now I try to stay single, but years ago, I used to have a boyfriend, and if I split up with one, I used to end up with another boyfriend, and this is how it went for me. So, like at 14, I had a boyfriend. Then at 15, I think I had a couple of different boyfriends, like one after the other, not at the same time, and this type of thing. So, yeah, I used to go from like being in a relationship to being in a relationship. I wasn't single for very long years ago, but that wasn't healthy for me in the end. You know, now I've learned to be single, and I've been predominantly single for a lot of years since 2011. That was my last long-term relationship, which was with a heterosexual. But he thought something was different about me. He used to accuse me of being a lesbian because of my attitude towards sex being different, and because I didn't like nudity, even on TV, for example, or in movies. And he used to accuse me of being lesbian, which I'm not. And that's another thing I hate. A lot of people, like heterosexual guys, there was an not asexual guy, a older heterosexual guy, and he didn't understand why I didn't want sex, because he invited me for coffee, and I said, I'm not interested, I don't like sex. He said, I invited you for coffee, not sex. I said, I know, but it would lead to that. That would be what you would basically want, and I'm not interested because I'm asexual. And then he came along another time, and he's like, so are you a lesbian then? If you're not attracted to guys. And I'm like, I am attracted to guys, but not in that way. And I'm not a lesbian. No, I'm not attracted to women at all. So it really pees me off when someone assumes that I'm a lesbian just because I'm not sexually attracted to a guy. But it's like I'm not. I am very attracted to guys, not all guys, but not sexually. And that's the difference. Like, throughout my whole childhood, I can see that I was not interested in sexual exploration. I wasn't interested in sex. I didn't even think about sex. It never even entered my head until someone brought up a boyfriend that I want sex. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. That wasn't what I was thinking. I was just thinking about kissing and cuddling and spending time with the person. You know, and that's the ideal relationship for me, is kissing, cuddling, holding hands, but not having the sex, and having long, deep, meaningful conversations, nice companionship, in a good way, not like some old doddery thing, but like some intellectual stimulation and doing fun things together, and non-sexual fun things, you know. And so I think it's really important to understand yourself really well. Like, I know exactly what I want in a relationship. If I don't get that, that's fine. If I don't get close to it, that's fine, because I can be single. You know, asexuals don't have to have second best. And I know some heterosexuals use some asexuals for emotional connection when it's lacking in their main relationship with their primary heterosexual partner, for example. There are asexuals that emotionally cheat as well. So it's not like asexuals can never cheat. You know, I knew an asexual guy years ago, and he had like 2 girlfriends, I think. He was interested in me being his girlfriend, and he already had a girlfriend. So it's not like asexuals can never cheat just because they don't have sex if they're an asexual that doesn't. But in the main, you know that you're safer being with an asexual person, because in the main, we're not going to go around having sex with other people, so you don't have that to worry about. In terms of me being with a heterosexual guy, I actually like it if a guy's very strict with himself on where he touches me, because I'm not interested in being touched, like, for example, my top part, down below. I'm not interested in that these days. And if I tell him that, I mean, obviously if I want to change my mind on that, I can, but that's kind of how I am. And I like it, though, if a guy says to me, oh, you can do whatever you want to my body. I do like that with a heterosexual guy. I've got freedom to do what I like. And then I know that I'm not having to worry about where I put my hands and stuff. You know what I mean? That's the me to say I like doing everything that they would be interested in me doing, because a lot of the time I'd be like, no, I'm not interested. And I'm not interested in seeing their genitalia. That's quite a big no-no for me. It's like, you know what I mean? I'm just really not interested in that. I'm like, put some clothes on down there. Do you know what I mean? At least have underwear on, please. Do you know what I mean? So whereas a lot of women, they'd be gawking going, oh, has he got a big one? What's the size of his? And I'll be like, I'm not interested at all. I'm really not interested. So I make it very clear when I'm on dating sites, when I'm interested in a guy, very upfront that I'm asexual and what that means. I don't experience sexual attraction towards guys. I tell guys that way up front, like when I've just met him. Before he's even really got to know me that much, because I'm like, well, if a guy's really interested in sex, and what's the point in even like pursuing each other or seeing each other if he wants sex and I don't? It's a waste of our time. So I'd rather be upfront about my asexuality, and then if he's still interested, then that's great. If he's not, that's fine with me, because I don't need to be in a relationship. A relationship would be a nice to have, though, with the right guy, but it's not a necessity for me. And I think with some asexuals, it's very difficult, because some asexuals feel very lonely, and they do obviously like companionship and some affection and things like that, even if they don't experience sexual attraction. And it can be difficult because a lot of their friends they see is partnered and married and got kids, and it can feel lonely for some asexuals, and that is the reality of the situation, because they see their friends around them that have relationships that then maybe never ever going to have, or they won't have the same sort of relationship. But I do believe there's someone for everyone out there in the world who wants it. And I do believe that you can find the right person for a relationship. And I know asexuals that are married to other asexuals. So it's not like you can't ever find a suitable asexual person for a relationship. But most people have to move if they're asexual, or find someone who moved to live near them. Because it's very unlikely you're going to meet the right asexual person for you on your doorstep where you currently live. Most people are going to have to go out and, either move to live near someone who would be in an asexual relationship with them, or they're going to have to have someone move to them. One of the person's got to be a mover, usually. And that's why a lot of asexuals, they don't carry on looking for someone. They kind of give up. Hello in chat. Nice to see you. And, it's really important that you get grasp of what you're looking for in a relationship, no matter what you're doing in the life and on dating sites and stuff, because only when you truly fundamentally know what you like and you dislike are you more likely to get the right person. I know that it's going to be very hard for me to get the right person for a relationship for me. And because I spend so much time on my own, I'm actually okay being on my own. Because these days I spend the majority of my time on my own at home. You know what I mean? So for me, I've got a very stable, strong foundation and sense of self. I'm very self-aware, but not everyone is. So I would say that if you're a heterosexual person who's thinking about having a relationship with an asexual, please work out what you want and what you don't want, what you like, what you need, and obviously discuss it with the asexual person as well. Because, it's important to find out how their asexuality affects them, because different asexuals, some asexuals like nudity, some don't. Some asexuals like doing some sexual acts but not others. Others don't like any sexual touching even. And every asexual person is different, but it's important to know that asexuality is real. It's a genuine sexual orientation that's based on lack of sexual attraction. And the more that you can understand asexuality, the more you can actually see there are different nuances to sexualities with different people, the more likely you are to be able to be open to understanding different sexualities, full stop. And that's very important because on dating sites these days, not everyone is heterosexual. There's people who are bisexual on that. There's people who are pansexual on that. Do you know what I mean? Even on Badoo, which has got an asexual category, Badoo dating site. So clearly asexuality exists when Badoo dating app and websites got an asexual category, right? They wouldn't have that category of sexual orientation if we didn't exist, right? So they've got an actual category for that. So it's important you educate yourself about asexuality so that you're able to spot an asexual person, most likely, and also you're able to see if your needs would match theirs. If you know you definitely don't want to be with an asexual person, then obviously you can avoid being with an asexual person. If asexuals feel more comfortable about coming out to you about being asexual. I was on a dating site and the guy there said to me, oh, my ex-partner was asexual and I don't want that again because they love sex, right? So it's important to have these honest, open, adult conversations and realise asexuality really exists. And I noticed in the comments, like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me. There's absolutely nothing wrong with not experiencing sexual attraction, not wanting sex, not getting the need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse, and not needing to be with a person even. There's nothing wrong with being single. There's nothing wrong with being you. There's nothing wrong with anyone being themselves, right? There's not something wrong, right? You have to understand the majority of population in the world is heterosexual. Therefore, our programming and conditioning by society is predominantly based on heterosexuality. So everything you see in the media, in adverts, on television, newspapers, usually radio, not everything, but the majority of it is geared towards heterosexuality. That's what's in your brain because they put it there. They implanted this in your brain from a very early age that you're heterosexual. This is how you behave in a relationship with heterosexuality. You know, you're meant to have sex. Most people are meant to have like marriage and kids and live together. But the world's changing. Like more and more people are single than ever before. It's very hard to find a relationship on a dating site, not just because there's people who are different sexualities, but because it's hard because a lot of people aren't even emotionally available for a relationship. They have lots of stuff they haven't worked on, or they get very disgruntled when things don't work out. And there's a lot of people who are disheartened with relationships and dating these days. There's more and more people opting to be and stay single, but there's nothing wrong with opting to be and stay single if that's what you enjoy in life. You know, there's nothing wrong with anyone being themselves. I love being asexual. Why? Because I don't have to deal with all the sex stuff that I didn't need in the first place. When I discovered asexuality.org, asexuality.org, I repeat that, one more time, asexuality.org, it's the biggest online forum for asexuals. And in 2014, when I was told by a counsellor you'd have to have sex in order to keep a good guy, which is absolutely toxic advice, and I went and Googled I love kissing but not sex and came across asexuality.org and saw there were other people in the forums like me who wanted a relationship without sex, I was absolutely overjoyed. I was so ecstatic. I thought, oh my God, there are actually people like me in the world who exist. I honestly thought I was the only one on the world, planet, and universe that didn't want sex, didn't like it, didn't need, not interested in it. And that's why I went to this counsellor to get some help. And, you know, it's just the worst thing ever to be told you'd have to have sex in order to keep a good guy. I mean, the guy's no good for me if he wants something that I don't want, and the only way I can keep him is by doing that. It's such a damaging message. If you have to do anything to keep a relationship with someone, you have to behave or act a certain way. That's not love. That's like control and manipulation. And it's also people pleasing and not being who you truly are. It's not actually an authentic relationship. It's based on being someone you're actually not, right? It's not good for you. So be expressive about your sexual orientation, show that to the world, be who you're born to be. You know, there's a lot of people that have different sexual needs, even amongst heterosexuals. Some of them need sex once a week, some of them need sex once every day. Right? Everyone is different. There are couples out there that are not asexual in sexual orientation, but they're not having sex for whatever reason. You know, it's not that bigger news, but just people don't hear about it. Lots of couples are going around saying, we haven't had sex for 5 years. And if they are, it's usually coming from a place of there's something wrong. But is there something wrong? There's only something wrong if one of you believes there's something wrong. Right? If an asexual person is sex repulsed and they don't want sex with you, it doesn't mean to say they can't love you. They can love you with all their heart, being, and soul. They just don't need the genitalia stuff. And that is something to be celebrated. It's not a bad thing. So always, always ask the asexual person what asexuality means to them, what types of things they like to do in terms of physicality, how much physical contact they have. Do you know my love language? My top love language is quality time. And my second, I've got two joint second ones. One is it's physical touch and words of affirmation. I love physical touch, even though I'm asexual. I just don't need sexual touch. You know, I love holding hands and kissing and cuddling and feeling like connected to my person pretty much 24/7 when I'm with them nearly. You know, like I have holding hands. I think there's something so romantic and so synergistic by just intertwining your fingers with someone, even around the supermarket. I'm like a hyper romantic, and I would rather be on my own as a hyper romantic than be with a person who's non-romantic. For me personally, because it wouldn't make me happy. So I do understand heterosexuals have sexual needs, and if they can't be happy without the sex, and I understand they can't be with an asexual who doesn't want sex ever, because they have that innate need or desire. I have an innate need and desire for loads of kissing and loads of public displays of affection and loads of physical contact without the sex. It's a big need. It's a deal breaker for me. Otherwise, I feel it's wrong and I'm not getting my needs met. So I do understand that heterosexuals, a lot of them have sexual needs, right? But what you shouldn't do is expect to get that from an asexual person who doesn't want, like, or need sex. And if that's what you really want, then don't be in a relationship with that asexual person and try and push them and keep moving them towards sex if that's not what they want. And if you really can't live without it, don't stay with them and resent it. Go and find someone else. Like, the world is huge out there. There's loads of asexuals, there's loads of sexuals, there's loads of different sexual orientations. We don't have to settle for someone who's not right for us. Whether you're an asexual person or a heterosexual person, you don't have to be with someone who's not right for you. It's better to be single and alone forever than with the wrong person and making each other miserable. But I want heterosexuals to have a huge awareness that asexuality is real, it really exists. There are thousands of asexuals around the globe, so when you're on dating sites, be aware of that and ask someone, like, what is your sexual orientation? Especially if they're a person who isn't really talking about sex, who isn't really interested in sex, and who's not gearing any of the conversation towards that, and who may be very cautious about doing physical stuff. You know, ask what sexual orientation they are. Don't just assume. People assume all the time, oh, you're heterosexual. It's like, well, no, I'm hetero-asexual, actually. It means I'm attracted to guys romantically, but not in a sexual way. And that's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's right for some people to be asexual. It's right for some people to hate chocolate cake. Most people will love chocolate cake, but some people hate chocolate cake, right? It's too sickly for them. So for some asexuals, having sex is too sickly for them. You know, whereas loads of people might love sex. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone is different. And it's logical. It's absolutely logical that not everyone will like everything in life. It's an impossibility for everyone to like every single thing. There's always going to be some people who don't like it. And some people don't like sex. And that's okay. You can even get some penetration repulsed heterosexuals. They're not asexual, but they hate sexual penetration. They're repulsed by the sexual penetration itself. Their intercourse, right? It doesn't make them asexual. They're just heterosexual and penetration repulsed. Does it mean they're wrong? No. If they got a repulsion over intercourse, penetration, they don't like it, that's fine, isn't it? That's who they are. You can't deny their own reality and gaslight them. You have to work with people's own realities. We have to work with who they believe they are and who they know they are. We have to accept people as they are. Because when we accept people as they are, then they accept us for who we are. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you for now. Thank you so much for being here. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Don't forget to grab a copy of Asexual Perspectives book on Amazon. That's 47 asexual stories. And also Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual, 78 Life Lessons to Asexual Life, especially if you're a heterosexual or asexual potential couple, or you're an asexual person who's looking to get into a relationship with a heterosexual or dating heterosexuals. That book's very handy for that. Thank you for everyone being in chat tonight. Thank you, Jonathan, earlier, and Lee. They're two of my main regulars here. Thank you to everyone else. There's been a lot of people chatting tonight. Really appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Every subscription helps this channel to grow, helps raise more awareness of asexuality. But also, of course, most topics I cover on this show are relevant to any sexuality. I cover dating, relationships, confidence, self-love, self-care, and I do lots of lifestyle vlogs, including munchy food that you may or may not like, and little bits about my life. So I show asexuality on a daily basis in real life context, and shows the challenges, the joys, the upheavals, and anything else you may want to know, see, and take an interest in asexual life. Thank you for being here. Lots of love. Thank you, Lee. Thank you to everyone. I'll see you soon on the next video live stream. Take care and stay ace. Happy asexual awareness.